Hello again, Dan Alasso, Making History, and it is day 30 of my retrenchment adventure. And so I want to reflect on what I talked about yesterday a little bit. And what I want to talk about specifically is the asymmetry of interest that I think kind of skews history. So if you recall, if you watched yesterday's post, I reacted kind of emotionally. Don't eat that, kitty cat. I reacted kind of emotionally to the thank you enrollment management professionals message from the president yesterday. And I've been thinking about why. Often, this is kind of how it works for me. I react to something, and then that gives me an opportunity and some motivation to take some time and try to understand what my reaction says about the bigger picture. Now, that doesn't mean I regret my reactions, and I don't apologize for them. They're often my guide to the importance of events. And I try, and this is important, I try to record the reaction so that I will be able to follow the clues that it provides. Part of yesterday's thing, I think, was that the president of our university is probably disconnected enough from what's actually going on that he probably believes that the people who pointed out to him that new student enrollment gains have happened this semester, this fall, he probably thinks that the people who mentioned this to him were responsible for them. These folks would undoubtedly have been the vice presidents and other people in his cabinet who have been tasked with increasing enrollment. So maybe he was sincerely ignorant of the extreme unlikelihood that it was these enrollment management professionals who affected this outcome. Now, I'm not 100% sure of this, but I can say it with some confidence since I was on the Strategic Enrollment Management Planning Steering Committee, as well as two of the subcommittees for a couple of years. So unless they got super busy in the few months since I resigned from those groups, they really couldn't have played that extremely causal a role in the change. And this caused me to think about history, about how much of the time our understanding of the past is probably skewed in exactly this way. There's a crisis, some people survive it, and others don't. The ones who do persist are the ones whose perspective is the most valid, right? After all, they're the survivors. The people who have different understandings of what happened are no longer around. In wars and revolutions, that means they're dead. But in social upheavals or business reorganizations, they're also gone. They've moved on to other places or to other jobs. They no longer have the interest or the time or the energy to invest in setting the record straight. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this in real time. I imagine a couple years from now, the last thing I'll want to waste my time on is trying to remember what I was thinking and feeling now, just in order to contradict whatever history of the BSU retrenchment of 23 exists at the time. Now, interestingly, I've been promoting the reading of primary sources in my history classes. They aren't retrospective, which is a kind of fancy way of saying that they're spoiler-free. The people are experiencing the situations firsthand without knowledge of how things are going to turn out in the end. Historians value these perspectives because they can tell us what was centrally important to people who were part of the event, who were living through it and participating in it, rather than just to the people who won, who, even if the winners write the histories, they may not even remember what they were thinking at the moment when these things were happening. Or historians who may have completely other agendas. Primary sources can also highlight disagreements about who did what when. And these may be difficult or impossible to tease out after the fact when a lot of the people who did have something at stake have moved on because they were the ones who failed to become part of the outcome. So that means there's this remarkable asymmetry of the past and of interest in the past too. It's kind of like externalities in economics. The people who are doing the problematic activity stand to gain a lot, and the people who are negatively impacted are often more numerous, but the negativity is diffuse. No particular individual is affected as much as the folks who stand to gain. And obviously the concentration of these effects is more motivating. And this happens a lot in America today, although that's not exactly what's happening in this retrenchment, because the 27 faculty who have been cut are actually still around this year and will be around for another 248 days. But that will change in time, and time will go on. There will, of course, be some people who are still around after this big change whose perspective is still not retained or written into the history. I wonder how much these are the people who, for whatever reason, were unable or were unwilling to stand up and make their perspective known at the time. Do they then later look back on events years later and say, oh, that's not exactly how I remember it. There's something wrong with that history. But, of course, they can no longer cast themselves back into the past and remember exactly how things were different for them. They just know that it's not quite the way it's being told. Maybe the exigencies of the present are sufficiently overwhelming to prevent them the type of reminiscence that they would need to set the record straight. And maybe that's why the present is always so exigent. So just some more general thoughts that I had from a specific situation, which is oftentimes for me how this works. So I hope you found that a little bit interesting. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.